Do you like mysteries? To wander through the enigmatic mist of the inexplicable? Great. I'm Merc, and here you'll find what you're looking for. Welcome to my domains. The truth dissolves into the mist.
Deep in the heart of the African continent, where the Congo River carves its way through an expanse of green so dense that sunlight barely touches the forest floor, there exists a legend that refuses to die. It is a story whispered around campfires, passed down through generations of indigenous tribes, a tale of a monstrous creature that lurks in the swamps and rivers. They call it Mokele-Mbembe, and they describe it as a living dinosaur. But is it merely a myth? A ghost story born from the primal fear of the unknown, or does something truly ancient and terrible actually inhabit those murky waters? This is the mystery that has captivated explorers, scientists, and dreamers for over a century, and it is a puzzle that challenges the very foundations of modern zoology. The name itself, Mokele-Mbembe, translates roughly to one who stops the flow of rivers or rainbow eater, a moniker that hints at the creature's immense power and its perceived dominion over the waterways of the Congo Basin. The indigenous people, particularly the pygmy tribes who live in intimate knowledge of the forest, are not telling a tale they heard from a traveling merchant. They speak of this beast with the same certainty they speak of elephants or hippos, as a tangible, living part of their world. They describe a creature of colossal size, possessing a smooth, grayish-brown hide, a long, flexible neck that can reach up to the branches of trees, and a powerful tail used to strike the water with devastating force. The descriptions are remarkably consistent, painting a picture that is eerily reminiscent of a saurópode dinosaur, a creature that should have been extinct for millions of years. This is where the story takes a sharp turn from local folklore into the realm of global fascination. In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, reports from European missionaries and explorers began to trickle back to the Western world, speaking of large, unknown animals in the interior of Africa. They heard the same descriptions from the natives, and their own encounters, though often distant and fleeting, seemed to corroborate the legend. One of the most famous early accounts came from a French missionary named Abbé Lévan Bonaventure Proyert, who, in 1776, wrote of encountering colossal footprints in the jungles of the Congo, footprints that could not have been left by any known animal. He was told by the locals that it was the trail of a monstrous beast that dwelled in the rivers, and the seeds of a modern myth were sown. The 20th century brought a new wave of interest, fueled by the burgeoning field of cryptozoology, the study of animals whose existence is unproven. This was the era of the Loch Ness Monster, and Africa had its very own Nessie, but with a more Jurassic flair. The idea that a dinosaur could have survived the great extinction event, hidden away in the impenetrable jungles of the Congo, was an irresistible narrative. It tapped into a primal part of our psyche, the hope that our world still holds secrets, that perhaps we have not mapped every corner of the planet. The 1913 account of a German explorer named Ludwig Freiherr von Stein-zu-Loznitz was particularly influential. He was told by local tribes that the Mokele-Mbembe was a herbivore, a creature that fed on the leaves of a specific type of liana vine, further solidifying the sauropod comparison. He was warned to stay away from its territory, advice he wisely heeded. Then came the expedition that truly thrust Mokele-Mbembe into the global spotlight. In 1980, the legendary cryptozoologist Roy Mackal, a biochemist from the University of Chicago, led an expedition into the remote Likwala region of the Republic of the Congo. Mackal was a serious scientist, not a mere sensationalist, and his quest was met with a mix of ridicule and hope. He returned with compelling stories. He and his team heard the creature's booming calls echoing through the jungle, sounds they could not attribute to any known animal. They documented secondary evidence, such as distinctive feeding trails and massive footprints, which they argued were inconsistent with those of hippos or elephants. Mokele was convinced he had found evidence of an unknown reptile, possibly a dinosaur. The National Geographic Society, a standard-bearer for scientific legitimacy, even took notice. They published articles and featured the Mokele-Mbembe mystery, lending it a credibility it had not previously enjoyed. The image of a team of scientists, armed with cameras and notebooks, trudging through the Congo in search of a dinosaur, captured the public's imagination. It was an adventure story straight out of a pulp novel, playing out in real time. The question on everyone's lips was, could it be true? Could a relic from the age of reptiles have survived the eons, hidden in a forgotten corner of the world? And if so, why has it never been properly photographed or captured? The mystery deepens, and the need for answers grows more acute. The most detailed descriptions of the creature come from the native accounts collected by explorers like Mokele. They speak of the Mokele-Mbembe as a gentle giant, a shy and primarily nocturnal beast that spends most of its time in the water, surfacing only to feed on the vegetation that lines the riverbanks. This shyness is often cited as the reason for the lack of conclusive photographic evidence. It is said to have a strong, musky odor, another detail that lends a sense of reality to the reports. It is described as a herbivore, which makes its existence seem more plausible, as a predator of its size would leave a far more noticeable mark on the ecosystem. It is the perfect cryptid, a creature that is seen just often enough to be believed, but is just elusive enough to avoid the crushing weight of scientific proof. The persistent reports are what keep the legend alive. Even in recent years, there have been occasional claims of sightings. Boat captains and local fishermen reporting glimpses of a long neck slicing through the water, or a massive dark shape moving beneath the surface. These accounts are usually anecdotal, lacking the hard evidence required to convince the scientific community, but they serve as powerful reminders that the story is not a relic of the past. It is a living, breathing component of the local culture. For the people of the Congo, the creature is not a debate to be had. It is a reality to be respected, a spiritual entity as much as a physical one. This cultural context is essential, as it speaks to a truth that transcends simple zoological classification. The Mokele-Mbembe is a symbol of the untamed wild, a guardian of the ancient forests. This brings us to the central paradox of the Mokele-Mbembe. On one hand, we have the compelling, consistent testimony of indigenous peoples who have lived in the region for millennia. Their knowledge of the forest is unparalleled, and it seems arrogant to dismiss their collective experience as mere superstition. On the other hand, we have the complete absence of any physical evidence that would satisfy the demands of modern science. No bones, no photographs, no video footage, no DNA samples. How can a creature of such immense size, a potential dinosaur, exist in the modern age and yet remain so perfectly hidden? The answer to this question is the key to the entire mystery, and it leads us into the murky waters of skepticism, the strange history of the region, and the profound human need to believe in the impossible. We have established the tantalizing narrative, the compelling descriptions from indigenous tribes, and the intriguing, if ultimately inconclusive, accounts from explorers. Yet we are left with a formidable wall of scientific skepticism that refuses to be breached. The primary argument against the existence of a creature like Mokele-Mbembe is the sheer biological impossibility. For a population of sauropod dinosaurs to survive undetected for millions of years, they would require a stable ecosystem capable of sustaining them. These were not small, solitary lizards. They were some of the largest terrestrial animals ever to exist. A breeding population would need a vast territory with ample food, and such a population would inevitably leave a trail of undeniable physical evidence behind them. The system of the Congo Basin is thoroughly studied, and no scientist has ever discovered the bones of a creature fitting the description of Mokele-Mbembe. Every major river and swamp has been surveyed, and while the region is vast and still contains undiscovered species, these tend to be small mammals, birds, or insects, not a 40-foot-long reptile. To believe in the dinosaur, one must reject the entire framework of modern paleontology and biology, which would be a leap of faith that most scientists are unwilling to take. The silence of the Congo in terms of fossil record is a deafening argument against its existence. This is why the story is so often compared to that of the Loch Ness Monster, or Nessie. Both are creatures of the water. Both are depicted as ancient reptiles. And both are legends born from a combination of local folklore, misidentification, and a deep-seated human desire for mystery. The comparison is often used to dismiss the Mokele-Mbembe, framing it as a cultural echo of a global archetype. The lake monster. The public is drawn to the idea of a Nessie in Africa, a dinosaur version of the Scottish legend, which makes it far more viral in nature. It is the same narrative structure that sells books and documentaries, and it feeds off the romanticism of a lost world. The Mokele-Mbembe is not just an animal. It is a story, and like all good stories, it bends and morphs to fit the expectations of its audience. A significant part of the skepticism stems from the nature of the expeditions themselves. As the 20th century progressed, the search for Mokele-Mbembe became a hobby for cryptozoologists and adventurers, but rarely for established scientists. The expeditions were often poorly funded and lacked the rigorous scientific methodology that would be necessary to either prove or disprove the existence of such a creature. They relied on eyewitness testimony, which is notoriously unreliable, particularly when dealing with a distant shape on the water or a sound in the night. Many researchers have pointed out that the descriptions of the Mokele-Mbembe suspiciously match the description of a well-known but utterly mundane creature, the African forest elephant. When an elephant swims in the river, its trunk and head can easily be mistaken for a long neck and head, and the rest of its body for a massive, dark bulk. This misidentification is often cited as the most plausible explanation for many of the sightings. The local folklore itself may have been contaminated by the arrival of the explorers. The indigenous people told the first missionaries and adventurers exactly what they wanted to hear. The first Europeans were obsessed with the idea of finding prehistoric monsters, a common theme of the Victorian era, as demonstrated by their fascination with dragons and other mythical beasts. It is plausible that the local stories were shaped and molded by the Europeans' preconceived notions. The pygmy tribes had their own complex cosmology and spiritual beliefs, and the idea of a dangerous water spirit was a common trope. When Europeans started asking about a dinosaur, it is possible that tribes adapted their existing water spirit stories to match the description, creating a feedback loop that reinforced the myth. This means the Mokele-Mbembe we know today could be a fusion of African folklore and European paleontology. Another compelling, if less romantic, explanation is that the creature is a giant monitor lizard, a species that does exist in the Congo. While not a dinosaur, a monitor lizard of significant size could account for some of the descriptions, particularly its long tail and its semi-aquatic lifestyle. Some stories even describe the Mokele-Mbembe as having a spiky ridge on its back, which is a feature of the monitor lizard. However, this explanation fails to account for the creature's supposed massive size or its long, giraffe-like neck. It is a partial solution at best, and it shows how the lack of concrete evidence has forced cryptozoologists to grasp at any straw that could support the legend. The biggest challenge to the Mokele-Mbembe is the timeline. Sauropod dinosaurs, like the Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus that the creature is often compared to, went extinct at the end of the Cretaceous period, approximately 66 million years ago. To suggest that the lineage of these animals survived in the Congo without any fossil record is to propose an evolutionary anomaly of staggering proportions. They would have had to survive all the major climate changes, the ice ages, and the rise of mammals, all while remaining virtually invisible to science. The logic of this is as flawed as it is romantic. The Congo has been the subject of intense biological research for over a century, and the idea that it could hide a creature as large as a school bus is, from a scientific perspective, borderline absurd. The silence of the paleontological record is a verdict that cannot be overturned by folklore alone. There is also the Neste effect, where the modern image of the creature is a blend of myth and media. The movies, books, and documentaries that have featured Mokele-Mbembe have cemented a specific image of it in the public mind, which may actually influence what eyewitnesses think they see. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When a local villager sees a large shape in the water, they are not seeing an unknown animal. They are seeing a cultural construct, a projection of a global media phenomenon. This psychological aspect of the mystery is often overlooked. The power of suggestion is immense, and it is one of the primary reasons why these legends persist even in the absence of hard facts. In more recent decades, expeditions have shifted their focus from hunting the creature to searching for its evidence. Cameras have been set up, and sonar scans have been used to probe the depths of the rivers. But the results have consistently been negative. The most comprehensive study of the region was conducted in the 1980s and 90s, and it concluded that the Likwala region, which is the creature's supposed heartland, simply does not have the carrying capacity to support a population of large, breeding herbivores. The vegetation there is not as plentiful as it would need to be. The reality is that the Mokele-Mbembe, if it exists, must be a remarkably small and efficient creature, or it must be a solitary individual, which would make reproduction impossible. The biological constraints are insurmountable. So we are left with a paradox. Why does the story persist? Why does it continue to viralize and capture the imagination of the world? The answer lies not in the Congo, but within ourselves. We are a species that craves mystery. We find comfort in the idea that the world is not entirely known, that there are still corners where the impossible might be real. The Mokele-Mbembe is a modern fairy tale, a story that allows us to believe in magic while calling it science. It is the Neste of Africa, a Jurassic Park fantasy in the heart of the jungle. The creature may not exist, but the dream of its existence is a powerful force. It represents the unyielding hope that perhaps, just perhaps, we have not yet discovered all of Earth's secrets. The search for Mokele-Mbembe is ultimately a search for wonder, a quest to re-enchant a world that has been thoroughly mapped and measured. The legend itself, whether real or imagined, has become a part of our global consciousness, a testament to the enduring power of a good story. The jungles of the Congo are dark and vast, and they hold many secrets. But is one of them a living dinosaur? The consensus among the scientific community is a firm no. Yet the myth persists, whispered by the rivers and the trees, a ghost of a bygone era. It challenges us to question what we know, and to wonder about what we don't. Perhaps it is not a question of biology, but a question of faith, a belief in the unknown that will never be extinguished. The next time you hear a splash in the water, or see a shadow move in the mist, remember the legend of Mokele-Mbembe. It is a reminder that the world is still full of mysteries, some of which are meant to remain unsolved. The search for truth continues, but the allure of the legend may be more important than the truth itself. The Mokele-Mbembe is not a dinosaur, not really. It is a mirror, reflecting our own deepest desires for discovery.
Did you like this mystery? And what is your theory? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed it, then like and share. I'm Merc, and I'll be waiting for you in the next mystery.